Hello, everybody, and welcome to Friday Live with me, Matthew Dashper-Hughes. This week, it is my absolute pleasure to be joined by Carol Hickson. Carol is a friend of mine. She's a client of mine. She's also the author of the Resilience Template, 7 Steps for Improving Your Mental Health, which is hence the title of today's live stream, which is exactly that. So without further ado, let's welcome Carol. Carol, hi, how are you doing? Good to see you.
Hi, thank you ever so much for interviewing me. I'm doing great, apart from the COVID jab this morning.
Okay, well, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed you don't have any adverse reactions. I know a couple of people have found it's knocked them about a little bit for 24 hours, but then they're back fighting strong, and of course, hopefully protected as well, which is what it's all about. So, good stuff. Well, Carol, firstly, welcome. Fantastic to have you with us. Tell us in sort of 60 to 90 seconds, just a quick overview of who you are, what it is you do, what's your background, and how you add value to your clients.
Okay, I'm a multidisciplined therapist, which means that I just can't list all of them because it's too long. I suppose initially people would think of me as a clinical hypnotherapist, emotional freedom technique practitioner, life coach, mindfulness teacher, but within that, there are several other modalities that I do. How do I add value to my clients? I add value to my clients by not having walked their journey, but having walked my own particular journey. And somebody asked me how long it's taken me to write the book. And I said 3 years in the planning, 7 months in the writing, and a lifetime in the living and learning. And I think that sums things up. I used to be a teacher before I became a therapist, and I did that very late in life too. I'm a late developer. And so before that, I was 20 years in pastoral roles in education. So I've always had an interest in working with people.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. So I suppose you just hinted a little bit about, I guess, probably the answer to my first question, which is really, what's the route that's led you here? I mean, I know you've described it to me previously as having, 3 real routes to the reason you do what it is that you do now. Would you mind sharing just in a high level overview what your journey's been like?
Yeah. So there are 3 drivers. So the first driver hit me when I was 50, actually. And I didn't realize that the impact of childhood trauma can actually have I was very naive, can have a long-lasting effect on your life. So there's a questionnaire called the ACE questionnaire, and the premise is it asks you 10 questions about childhood up to the age of 18. And if you score 6 or over, then potentially you run more risk later in life of having health problems, and potentially you could die 20 years ahead of your peers. That's my first driver, because I think this is stuff that we all need to know. And the next one is that I've got 5 prolapse discs. I've got a diagnosis of dystonia, that I'm paralyzing down the left side of the body. And so chronic pain was a massive issue for me. And when I retrained as a therapist, I don't have the pain anymore. I have the discs, I have the issues, but I don't have the pain because I dealt with mindset. And then the fourth one, which happened at a similar time to the pain, was 4 years of chronic insomnia, and it's World Sleep Day today. At the end of my 4 years, the last 6 months, I was getting about 56 minutes a night. The brain can be that accurate. So you can imagine they were very hard times.
Wow.
And there were a few more catalysts that year, which I won't go into. But basically, the universe got a big hammer out, hit me over the head, Christmas 2016, and said, sort your stuff out. And I did. And I became a therapist.
Absolutely. And I think when you've got those sort of personal elements to this kind of journey, when you do go into the area that you're into, and you add the academic rigor, that sort of, I suppose, gives shape to the kind of journey that you've been on yourself. It means that everything just has a degree more, I suppose, meaning, and the empathy that you've got for other people. well, it's predicated on your own understanding and your own lived experience. So that makes it incredibly powerful. You mentioned the ACE question. Now, I didn't know anything about this until I read your book. I have to confess my own ignorance, and I went and found it online. Just for the benefit of the people watching at home, what does ACE stand for?
Adverse childhood experience. And it asks you the kind of questions, maybe, did you grow up with somebody in your house who you saw hit a parent, or did you grow up in a household where there were alcohol or drug problems? Were you frightened as a child? And I say the general rule is, if you can score 6 or more out of 10, that potentially you're at risk later in life.
Yeah, it's a relatively simple, straightforward questionnaire to do, and it's self-diagnostic in that sense. And I have to say, I did it myself, and I led a fairly kind of blessed and charmed life over the course of the sort of nearly 47 years I've been on the planet. So unsurprisingly, I didn't come out with the kind of same levels of trauma that you certainly experienced, but it was certainly something that opened my eyes, I guess, that kind of question. And I suppose it also speaks to why it is that you've really built a lot of your work around helping both yourself and your clients to build mental resilience. Just, if you wouldn't mind, just paint a picture for us as to what you mean by resilience. What does that word actually mean for you?
For me, I think it's summed up in the book by the song, I get knocked down, but I get up again. I think it's just... it's that we, life is hard. It's not meant to be a Disney film. It's also amazing, and we get knocked down and we get buffeted, and we have to withstand storms, and we get up again. So resilience is all about how we do that and how we practice it and how we teach our children to do it as well.
Yeah,
we can't protect our children from life.
I think, and I have to say, I did have a wry smile when I got to that particular part, because it's fairly early on in the book, that bit, when you suddenly start quoting Chumbawamba. I'm thinking, I didn't expect to be reading 90s lyrics, but there you go. That's fine. You're clearly coming from my era there, so I'm speaking to my happy place. I like that. You do then go on and talk about 4 pillars of resilience, if you like, and you paint a fairly sort of robust picture of what those 4 pillars are. Just give us a bit of an overview, if you don't mind, without any spoilers, because we want people to buy the book. A free advert here. Everybody, go buy this book. It's on Amazon. It really is very, very good. Whether you're living with the kinds of things that Carol actually helps her clients with, or whether you're just interested in human psychology, it really is terrific. It was a great read. So please tell us, what are the 4 pillars that you talk about?
Well, thanks for that, Matthew. The check is in the post.
Excellent.
Flexibility, and we get knocked down, but we get up again. We've got to be flexible as a species. We have to adapt, and we see nature in all the time. We see, as I mentioned in the book, we see plants growing on building sites and things. So flexibility, we've got to adapt. And I say to people, a year ago, did you ever think that the first thing you'll say, or the last thing you'll say as you're going out, would be, let me get my mask? No, we've adapted. And then the next one is pragmatism. We've got to be realistic. These are engines, they wear out. This is life isn't always a bed of roses. So we've got to be realistic, and we've got to plan. I think sometimes there are people who think that life just happens to them, but it doesn't. It's not personal, it's just life. So we do have to plan, and that might be, just as we plan how to run a business, or we plan where we're going on holiday, we have to plan for our mental health, we have to plan for our resilience. You don't put unleaded fuel in a diesel car, you plan. And then the other one is action, and that takes me back to what I just said. We have to be people of action. We have to do something every single day. Nothing extraordinary happens in the ordinary. So we have to be people of action, and we have to take responsibility. I really love the word responsibility. I don't know if you've thought about it. It means response able.
Yeah.
Are you able to respond?
I like that. Absolutely, and underpinning that, sort of holding ourselves accountable, which I suppose falls into the pragmatism piece as well. So you've got
Yeah.
flexibility, adaptability, I suppose, rather than reactiveness, because to react is to be instinctive, whereas to respond is to actually do things in, I suppose, a planned way, a measured way. And all of those four pillars, I thought, really intermingled with each other and formed a really coherent whole. So I wrote myself a little note when I was reading along with your book. You can always tell a good book when you've got a notepad next to you, right? So I wrote down, for me now, based on what I'm reading here, to be resilient, the word resilient is a noun, but in order for you to actually experience resilience and to experience the benefits of resilience, you've got to live it like it's a verb. You've got to do it. And I thought that was quite powerful. I mean, because I'm a word guy, I like words, so hence I went that way with it. But then you paint a picture of really a 7-step model, hence the 7 steps to improve your mental health. You paint the picture of this 7-step model, and I mean, in a beautiful kind of acronym, you actually make it into a word, which I thought was terribly clever as well. So the word is partner, which I thought was really nice. So just give us a bit of an overview. What do the steps of partner actually mean?
Well, I mean, I think I make the first comment that we're partnership between our subconscious mind and our conscious mind, and we don't have enough hours in the day to go into that, but why we do need to get our subconscious mind on board. But the partner steps are the steps that I used when I was doing this as a community class with people pre-lockdown. The first one is preparation. I think a lot of times we try and make ourselves feel better, but we try and make ourselves feel better without actually acknowledging that there's an actual problem. So preparation is about making sure that whatever is going on inside us is calm. It's putting out the fire so that we can carry on and do the rest of the work. So preparation's absolutely vital. Acceptance. There's so many of us who've had stuff that have gone on in the past, and we're using so much energy now fighting stuff that we can't change. So acceptance that things have happened, they have been unfair, they have felt terrible at times, but we accept that they happened and we accept that we can move forward. I think it's really important. And then the next one is reconnect. Certainly with my back, I gave up my power to doctors and consultants. If I'd have listened to my body, if I'd have stayed connected, and when we're living in an anxious head, we do tend to lose connection. If I'd have stayed connected, my life would have been so much easier. So reconnection is really, really important. And then T4 talk, self-talk. A lot of us have got an inner critic. A lot of us have got a voice that, is always muttering in the background about how awful we are or how stupid we are. So looking at that self-talk and understanding that we don't do this to anybody else. We don't do this to anybody we love or like or admire. And it's a lack of respect. We have to respect ourselves. We have to talk nicely to ourselves. And that leads us into N is for now. And, so many people don't have time to change things. So many people, they'll do it at the weekend, they'll do it at Lent, they'll do it when the children leave home. We're not guaranteed any time other than now. So I think now is absolutely vital. And then embed. And this for me is the special one. This was my ka-ching moment. When clients couldn't remember to do things or didn't know when the best time to do things was. Because, if we're dealing with an anxious mind, there is some brain fog, or there can be. So the embed section for me is vital, because we hang these new techniques and tools, which are going to become new habits. We've just got to give them time to embed, and we hang them on existing habits. Everybody's got 2 minutes when they wash their hands, they go to the loo. Everybody can do a preparation technique to calm the fight or flight response. Everybody's got a minute when they're boiling a kettle. So there is no longer any excuse why people can't do these things. And then the final one's reflection. Some things will work, some things won't work. Why don't they work? Often it's because those are the things that we really need to do, that we kind of push away because they're the hard things. Reflection's really important. Reflection, and what do I need to do now? My life's changed. I'm not the same person that I was. So keep coming back to that idea that, you know, our destination is going to change a little bit, and we need just to come back and just refocus. So actually that word partner came very easily in the end. And I think it meant a lot to me, being able to think about that partnership, as I said, between conscious and subconscious mind.
It's a perfect word. It strikes me that that word is just so appropriate for what it is you're trying to get across, the point that you're trying to get across. And I think, you know, the fact that it's the 7 steps as well, which is that perfect, you know, 7 plus or minus 2. Yeah. Being the way that our short-term memories work and our brains work, it just seems to be almost like it was meant to be. I really like that phrase. So yeah. Couple of things I'd like to pick up on and unpack a little bit, because I'm conscious that those people watching might be, I suppose, wondering what some of what we're just talking about actually means. So we talked a little bit there about the fight or flight response and preparation and things. I mean, I remember my old psychology lecturer used to call the fight or flight response the quadruple F response, which was fight, flight, freeze, or copulate, which if you think about it, it's quite rude. But really, it speaks to the fact that actually this is a response to environmental cues, and those environmental cues are called stressors. So basically, stress or that physiological response to the environment is a perfectly natural part of who we are. In fact, without it, our species wouldn't have survived at all. It is literally a survival response and indeed a procreation response. So, you know, we wouldn't be here having this conversation on this wonderful live streaming technology if it wasn't for the fact that our ape-like ancestors had this response way back when, because they never would have survived to pass on their genes. So it's really our physiological response to the environmental cues, but then it's our mindset response that then is overlaid onto that. And I suppose reaction and response are 2 slightly different things. But preparation, you mentioned right at the very beginning of the partner model. I was put in mind of, have you ever read Lessons from the Hanoi Hilton, by the way? Have you ever read that book?
No.
Great book, really is good, but put it on your reading list. It's a little bit harrowing. I don't know why I'm saying it's a terrific book. It's not like it's a fun read in some ways, but it's about a guy called James Stockdale. In fact, he's called James Bond Stockdale. His middle name is actually Bond, so he's literally James Bond. And he was a guy who was shot down in the Vietnam War. He was an American pilot. He was shot down over Saigon, and he was taken to this prisoner of war camp, euphemistically dubbed the Hanoi Hilton. And it was interesting because in the book he talks about how US Air Force pilots during that war or that conflict were trained to kind of overcome the amygdala hijack, the fight or flight response. Right. And he talks about how they would get, as in the US Army, would get this cockpit from a plane, and they would suspend it over a swimming pool, like a deep diving swimming pool. And then they would, without warning, release the pilot, cockpit and all, into the pool. And then the pilot would have to, unshackle his harness and get out and basically extricate themselves from this kind of mock crash. And they would do it over and over and over again, because rehearsal, you can actually habituate your amygdala to be able to deal with the environmental cues. So the stressor is still there, but habituation, preparation is such a key part of that. And I was sort of put in mind of that when I was reading your book. I didn't know if you'd actually come across that story or similar.
No.
Quite cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about sort of what preparation looks like in your world, and maybe some of the stuff that you do with some of your clients, obviously without breaching any confidences.
Preparation for me is about, so I think of fight or flight as they've sent in the army. So our brain has sent in the army, the defenses have gone up. So Rich thinks this is corny, but for me, I send in the carmy. Okay, so I didn't mention that in the book.
No, I'm with Rich on that one.
I send in the carmy. It's about, so it's about, if your brain has gone through a series of, it's reacted to a perceived threat, so it triggers a set of responses in your body. What we can do is we can use these techniques to override the message that they're all giving to the brain, that the brain's giving to the body. By changing our body responses, we're now overriding the fight or flight response. So in the preparation, what I do is I do techniques which manually override a brain that's gone into the stress response. So stress brain will be really, really focused. You know, if you've seen anybody who's scared at driving, they're clutching on. So we'll use eye movement as part of the manual override to the brain. If I'm using my eyes, I can't be stressed. We'll use the breath. A lot of people don't realize that when we extend the out breath, it slows the heart rate down, and heart rate is a signal from the brain to speed up because we're running or fighting for our lives. We will do techniques to calm the nervous system, which make people feel incredibly uncomfortable to start with. And that can involve touching ourselves on our arms. But as I say to everybody, if your mate was upset, you'd pat him on the back, you'd pat him on the arm. We can do that for ourselves. So for me, preparation is sending a shed load of manual overrides to the brain to say, you think there's a problem and there isn't. So we come right into our environment, we tune in all of our senses. We know what we should be hearing if this is a crisis going on. We know what we should be seeing. Oh, look, we're not seeing any of it. That's, for me, preparation. It's putting out the fire before we then move into doing the things that are going to begin to transform our lives. In some cases, putting out the fire is the transformation. You know, because we stop in that production of adrenaline and cortisol, and that's the problem. You know, that causes inflammation, and that causes, you know, 95% according to research. And you're right, research is really important when you're dealing with mental health. It causes 95% of all disease and illness. So let's put out the production of cortisol and adrenaline. Let's stop that immediately.
Yeah, this is the thing, isn't it? It's a healthy response when it's needed, but unfortunately, our bodies and our brains evolved for a world that doesn't exist anymore. You know, the chances of us kind of getting savaged by a large jungle predator, hopefully reasonably slim these days, whereas, you know, those perceived jungle predators or what are subconsciously, unconsciously perceived to be jungle predators these days, unfortunately are things like our everyday lives. You know, so when you have this prolonged exposure to a stressor which is unnatural, then you end up having a slightly unhealthy iteration of that response. So it's you know, it's important to manage it, but that's not to do down people who are feeling anxious or undermine the validity of that feeling. You know, it is a perfectly valid feeling. It's just, you know, there are techniques that will help to deal with it so that you don't have to feel it all the time. And that's the power of this stuff, which I really like. So yes, terrific stuff. You also mentioned self-talk. I love one of the phrases you use in the book, because again, it's one of the little things that I noted. And I just had a wry smile to myself. I thought, this is so true. You know, if you talk to other people the way that you talk to yourself, you wouldn't have any friends. That's so true. Because we do all kind of beat ourselves up. Why is that? Why do we have such a negative take on ourselves at times?
We are defaulted towards the negative, and I always like to say that to people, because, you know, we do need to know that we are defaulted to think negatively. It is part of our survival response. But we know, give me a child when he is 7 and I'll show you the man. We know that the first things we learn up to those 7 years are really important. We also know that the subconscious mind is actually the predominant mind up until we're about 3. So that cognitive, rational brain hasn't even begun to develop in the first year. So that self-talk can be an amalgamation. It can be a one-off thing. It doesn't have to mean that somebody was consistently cruel to you, but we know that these things are cumulative. You know, and if you get a parent who one day loses the temper and tells you you're stupid, and then your teacher says the same thing, and, you know, one of your friends laughs at you and says you are, we know these things often start from nothing. Not always. Sometimes they've started from a bully, you know, be that a parent or a teacher or somebody at school. But often it can be something and nothing that start that dialogue in our minds, and then we just carry on. We just take the voice on our payroll, which is always the sad thing for me. You know, people sometimes come to me and they talk to me about a bully, somebody who was they were bullied at school, and they're saying they've ruined my life. And then when I take them back and we think about how long ago they left school, and actually they've not seen that person since, and they've just taken the bully on the payroll.
What a great phrase. That really does resonate. I think there's so many people I know who are in exactly that kind of boat, and it's sad, isn't it, that we do these things to ourselves? But it's involuntary. I don't think anybody ever means to do it.
No.
But yeah, no, it's such a commonplace thing, isn't it? Interesting. I mean, I think self-talk and those sort of limiting beliefs that come from those things quite often, I mean, certainly in the work that I do, and I know you and I have worked together on a few things. I see that kind of self-talk can be an impediment to taking action. And your emphasis on action within the book, I thought, was really, really powerful, because it means that you can become the architect of your own life. And I mean, you've just quoted Aristotle. I'm going to quote somebody else, and I can't even remember who the heck it was. So I can't remember. It might have been Franklin, or it might have been Lincoln. It was one of those guys who said, you know, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. I suspect that probably is going to be Franklin, because he was the inventor. But, you know, we'll whoever it was, it's a great quote.
Yeah.
Attribution error, but never mind. It's one of those things which, you know, if you can take action, you can intentionally design your own future by taking action today. You can also change your own mindset by taking action, and those outlooks of limitation can become outlooks of belief and positivity, which is really something that comes through in the book. So yeah, no, that's great. I'm conscious we're coming, believe it or not, already to the top of our half hour together, and
No.
I know. I did say that half an hour was going to be it was going to be tough to keep it down to half hour. So, in terms of like just wrapping up a little bit, is there any sort of key takeaways that you'd really like people to have to know about from the book, or indeed from your work with them?
That they're not broken, that they're not weak, that this is a physiological response that might be a bit oversensitive, and that there is a lot of things that they can do, that they don't have to feel there's a stigma at all, because we can change. And it's once we start, it's really quite rapid.
Fantastic. Powerful words to finish on there. Carol, how can people get hold of you? What's the best way for people to reach out and get in touch with you?
You can get me on carol@carolhickson.co.uk. You can phone me. Can I give my number out?
Of course you can.
07899 806 494. Yeah, please get in touch. I'm happy to share any knowledge that I have. There's no obligation on people. This is my mission.
Absolutely fantastic. That's very good. And I know you work with clients on an individual basis, but you also do some fantastic work with companies on an organizational level to be able to bring this kind of well-being to the workplace as well, to assist employers with their duty of care to their employees. So yes, if you are an employer and any of what we're talking about is resonating with you, or you feel that it may even be relevant to some members of your staff, but you don't even know how to broach that kind of a subject, then certainly do reach out to Carol and have a conversation with her. So that's it for this week's Friday Live. My name's Matthew Dashper-Hughes, and it's been an absolute pleasure interviewing Carol this week. Next week, I have my very good friend Nikki Bartley, who has got some fabulous news about an incredible innovation, which I cannot wait to share with you all. But if anybody in the meantime is wanting to get in touch with me, then obviously you can do so on LinkedIn. I'm the only Matthew Dashper-Hughes on LinkedIn. There's not too many Dashper-Hughes around. If you want to email me, then don't worry. You don't need to write that entire very, very long, stupid name. It's just mdh@sandler.com, just the initials. Keep things simple. And my mobile number is 07715 269 724. And that is it for this week's Friday Live. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you found some value in it. And we will see you all again next week. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.